Out near Emporia, there's a bridge that locals still drive to late at night. Not because it's beautiful, not because there's anything to do there, but because people swear something still lingers. A woman in white, footsteps on the metal grating, headlights that appear where no car should be. Some people claim that they hear splashing in the river below, like a car sinking all over again. The locals call it Bird Bridge. Officially, it's Rocky Ford Bridge, an old steel truss bridge stretching over the Cottonwood River just outside town. But nobody really remembers the official name anymore, because in the summer of 1983, the bridge became tied forever to a death so disturbing that it inspired books, national headlines, and even a television movie. And depending on who you ask, the story never really ended. Welcome back to Meals to Unalive For, the podcast where true crime, dark history, conspiracy, and food collide. I'm your host, Jody Breton, and every week we serve up the stories that are as disturbing as they are fascinating, paired with a meal inspired by the chaos. So grab a plate, lock your doors, and let's dig in. Today, we're making pretzel bites and a beer cheese dip. July 17th, 1983. Emporia was the kind of town where people left doors unlocked. Church attendance mattered. Your reputation mattered. Pastors were trusted without question. So when hikers discovered a partially submerged station wagon beneath Rocky Ford Bridge, the town reaction was shock, but not suspicion. Floating nearby was the body of 33-year-old Sandra Sandy Bird. Sandy wasn't some mysterious drifter. She was well known in town, a mathematics instructor, mother of three, active in church life, intelligent, outgoing, deeply involved in her community. And according to the official story, she had simply lost control of the car late at night and plunged into the river. Case closed, at least at first. The bridge itself helps sell the story. Rocky Ford Bridge is isolated. Even today, driving out there feels unsettling. Gravel roads, thick darkness, the kind of Kansas quiet where you can hear insects buzzing from the fields you can't even see. And then there's the bridge, a narrow iron structure built in the early 1900s, creaking under tires, sitting low above muddy water. You can imagine how easy it would be to miss the turn at night. But some people immediately noticed things that didn't fit. There weren't obvious skid marks. There were questions about why Sandy was out there alone so late. And according to reporters who later investigated the case, Sandy's husband, Reverend Tom Bird, gave conflicting stories about the events surrounding her death. Still, nobody pushed too hard, because Tom Bird wasn't just anybody. He was a Lutheran minister, young, charismatic, respected, the grieving widower. And in a small town, people often believe what they want to believe. But then another body turned up. Just a few months later, in November of 1983, Martin Anderson, the husband of Tom Bird's alleged lover, Lorna Anderson, was found shot to death in the neighboring Gary County. Suddenly, the impossible possibility became unavoidable. What if Sandy Bird's death hadn't been an accident at all? Investigators and local reporters began connecting the dots. And once they started digging, the image of the perfect pastor began to rot away underneath the surface. Authorities eventually came to believe Tom Bird and Lorna Anderson had been having an affair and wanted to remove the spouses standing in the way of their future together. According to investigators, Sandy had not accidentally driven into the river. She had been attacked on the bridge itself, her death staged to look like a crash. Think about that for a second. That lonely bridge, pitch black Kansas night, metal groaning in the wind, and a woman realizing in her final moments that the person she trusted most had brought her there to die. That's the detail that keeps this case alive in people's minds. Because bridges already feel liminal, suspended between spaces, between safety and danger, between one side and another. And Bird Bridge became suspended between accident and murder, reality and legend. Tom Bird was eventually convicted for Sandy's murder, as well as conspiracy connected to Martin Anderson's death. The story exploded nationally. In 1987, CBS released Murder Ordained, dramatizing the murders and investigation. Parts of it were filmed in Emporia itself. For many towns, that would have been the end of the story. But Emporia did what small towns often do with trauma. It transformed into folklore. Over the years, Rocky Ford Bridge stopped being just a crime scene. It became Bird Bridge, a haunted place. Teenagers began daring each other to drive out there after dark. Paranormal stories spread across Kansas. Some claimed they saw a woman standing at the bridge before disappearing. Others reported hearing splashing beneath them, with the river being completely still. And honestly, you don't even have to believe in ghosts to understand why places like this become haunted. Sometimes a haunting is just memory refusing to disappear. Because when something violent happens in a place that's otherwise quiet, the violence stains it. You feel it, especially somewhere isolated. There's no city noise to dilute the atmosphere. No crowds, no distractions, just the bridge. And your imagination filling in the gaps. One thing I find especially eerie is how ordinary the story began. No mass killer, no abandoned asylum, no creepy stranger in the woods. Just church picnics, children, a respected minister, a marriage that, from the outside, looks stable. That's what makes the story unsettling. The horror wasn't hiding in the shadows around Bird Bridge, it was sitting in the front pew. Even today, more than 40 years later, people in Emporia still talk about the case. Reporters who covered it have spoken publicly about how deeply it affected the town and how quickly the narrative shifted from tragic accident to suspended murder. If you ever look at photos of the bridge, you'll understand why the legend stuck. It looks exactly like the kind of place a ghost story would grow from. Old steel beams, rust, water moving below in total darkness. The kind of place where headlights feel too bright and shadows feel too deep. Maybe that's why Bird Bridge still fascinates people, because it forces together two things humans are deeply uncomfortable with: faith and betrayal. A pastor accused of murder, a bridge turned into a grave. A small town realizing evil doesn't always arrive looking monstrous. Sometimes it smiles, sometimes it preaches, sometimes it's trusted, and sometimes it waits for you at the end of a lonely bridge in the Kansas dark. So if you ever find yourself outside Emporia late at night and somebody offers to take you to the Bird Bridge, you'll probably laugh and say yes. Most people do. But when the gravel road narrows and the river appears below the rusted steel, and the sound of the town disappears completely, you might understand why locals still glance over the edge, just to make sure there isn't a car down there, or someone standing on the bridge, watching back. For today's little appetizer, let me just say that pretzel bites are pretty delicious, especially when you make them at home. I've never made pretzels at home, so it was a new experience for me. The beer sauce was good. It was a little bit watery though, so I do wish it was a little bit thicker, so I would probably try a different recipe next time. But either way, the flavor was still great. Thank you so much, guys, and I'll see you on the next one.